Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Guacamelee Super Turbo Championship Edition. And this is a bit of a special time. Not only are we finally going through the rest of cleanup, but we finally hit 200 subscribers. I'll be posting an updated video about this probably later this week, once I get some time, probably on like Thursday to record it. But that is huge, to say the least. Thank you all so much for subscribing, and I hope you guys continue to stay with us as we grow further, because I really do have plans to continue doing this for a long, long while. Either way, into the game itself. At this point, since we're at cleanup finally, there's surprisingly little cleanup we have to do. I managed to get most of the items in the areas we've seen thus far throughout the game. Canal de las Flores here is the only area where there's a lot of items left. I think at the time that we entered this area, I only had like 30% of them. Yeah, because each one's 5%, so there's a total of 20 items to get here. And the reason I've waited particularly this long to come back here is, first off, as I've mentioned a couple times throughout this playthrough, I'm not as familiar with Super Turbo Championship Edition. Most of my playthroughs of Guacamelee were on Gold. So areas like this I'm just not as familiar with to begin with. And it's also the fact of you need almost every ability, if not every ability in the game to get everything here. So I just decided to wait until now. It's the usual cleanup conundrum with games. Do you get you backtrack constantly to get everything so you can be as powerful as you can be at that specific moment? Or do you wait until right before Endgame to go back and get everything right when you have everything, so it just goes more smoothly? In this case, I opt for the latter, just because I can, really. Guacamelee 2, I probably do that more so than the other as well. Though in the case of Guacamelee 2, I think Guacamelee 2 is weird in that I think cleanup is both more and less straightforward. Because you have so many more abilities, meaning you can really get a lot of things much more quickly throughout the game as it is anyway. But since the areas are larger, sometimes going back for things can be a lot more annoying. Well, I don't want to say every area is larger, but a large amount of the areas are a bit different in size, to say the least. I'm looking at the weird prison area especially. Now, with Canal de las Flores, there's another thing we have to do while we're here as well. Back when I forget if it's when we first accessed Pico de Gallo, or if it was when we accessed it for the dungeon. We got a side quest while we were there to kill 5 special eluxes, I forget which the pronunciation is, the little dudes, the little enemies. There are 5 slightly larger variants of them located throughout this entire area, and we need to kill all 5 of them on one visit here. I think if you kill one, go to the dude again, and come back, that one will respawn. So you need to make sure you find out where they all are and kill them. That's another reason why I've waited this long to get every ability, because you can only access some of them. I think with the you at least need the goat run. I'm not sure if you need the goat fly. And that's the first one of them down. They have a lot more HP than their standard variants, but they're still pretty easy. Honestly, the worst part about cleanup with this game is that sometimes the passageways aren't as clearly marked. There's one case we'll be seeing later on where the thing that indicates that there's an item there is like uber tiny on the map. In fact, that's if you're new to the game, that's my best recommendation when it comes to cleanup. Take a close look at the map and see if there's any areas that look like they're fading off into the distance or look like they should be dead ends but might not be. Because very likely those are the places where you're going to find wherever an item is. Now we're going to be seeing a case of that later on in this very part. And if you're in the world of the dead here in this part of Canal de las Flores, we actually find this secret little house with the tiny things that the Trio de la Muerte made, apparently. Weird. I don't even think those hearts that they send out do anything, but okay, there's 3 silver coin chests in there, so hey, it's 15%. You can actually reach one of those silver coin chests if you just use the chicken egg bombs. But you need to get all 3 to get 100%, so we're just going to do that. I did try to find as streamlined a pathway as I could to get all the rest of the items in the game that we haven't gotten thus far. There are sometimes I have to backtrack a bit more out of the way, and you have to do that in some cases to begin with, just because of what some of the items are. But I tried to make this as streamlined as possible just so you wouldn't have to backtrack too far. Though thankfully, due to the fact that this game has the Symphony of the Night, I guess it's not Symphony of the Night, it's more of a... I think Dawn of Sorrow was the first one. No, not Dawn of Sorrow. Aria of Sorrow was the first Castlevania game to have warp rooms that you could select the choice between. Or wait, no, I don't think you could. Could you do that in the one with Nathan? Well, sure, what was that one called? Circle of the Moon? I honestly don't remember. I never beat Circle of the Moon. I got about halfway through it and I just lost interest due to some other game coming out at the time, I think. And the less said about the one with used Belmont, the better. It is used, right? It's not juiced. Justy? Yeah, I think it's supposed to be used. I think what's kind of annoying, but also really smart about Canal de las Flores, though, in terms of Metroidvania-like design, is that there's a lot of items here you can see early on in the game, but you just can't get because you don't have the proper ability set yet. And I like that for a couple reasons. One, it's just nice to taunt the player like that a little bit. But also, it makes you remember that a little annoyance that you couldn't get that item for later for when you have later abilities. Meaning you can think, okay, I can get this now. And I understand that's like a major part of the game, the design of these kind of games, but when it works right, it just works so well for your head. It just feels so cathartic. Speaking of Metroidvanias, though, I really need to play a couple more, because I've had games like Hollow Knight for, I think, close to a year now, thanks to a friend gifting it to me. And because I know Hollow Knight's getting a sequel now. That was originally going to be an expansion. But I've heard the game's really good. The thing that scares me about a game like Hollow Knight, Metroidvanias, I think, have a bit of a sweet spot with length. Because I've heard Hollow Knight's like over 20 hours if you're going for everything. To me, a sweet spot for a game like this in length is probably between 10 and 12 hours. Like that's first playthrough, I should note. Repeated playthrough probably closer to 6 to 10, somewhere in that range. The length of Hollow Knight alone intimidates me, and my friend Carlos, who absolutely is in love with the game especially, has told me that it's an investment. And I know it's a bit weird for me to think about investments like that because I'm a Yakuza fan. And I have Platinum 0 Kiwami, and I'm working on Kiwami 2. I think I'm in Chapter 9 right now. You know what? I could probably just press my PlayStation button right now because I actually have my PS4 on in the background. Yeah, Chapter 9. And it's just one of those things where I guess I like to judge my battles a bit differently now. Because I've done some annoying Platinum trophies and completions in my past. Like, when it comes to games on the PlayStation, I don't like to go for a Platinum trophy in a game that has required difficulties. Like, I don't mind, like, if there's a New Game Plus option for it. Like, in the Yakuza games, for example, there is a New Game Plus option, and that allows you to also get the trophy for being the game of the highest difficulty. If it's a game like Devil May Cry with Hell and Hell and such, I'm a bit more on the edge about it. I guess at the end of the day, it depends on the game if I'm going to do it or not. Like, especially the lengthwise. Because, like, I Platinum Dragon Quest XI not too long ago, about 2 weeks ago now. If that game had an alternate difficulty mode you had to play through again, I would not get that Platinum because that game took me 120 some odd hours, I want to say. I might be a bit off on that number. But, while I enjoyed my time, I would not want to play through that immediately again. RPGs with New Game Plus mechanics need to make sure the game can be completable with that New Game Plus in like under 20 hours, I'd say. The only exception to that, in my eyes, is Persona, just because that game plays so differently to begin with. And thankfully, Persona doesn't usually have difficulty-dependent trophies. Because I remember when I did Persona 5's Platinum, the only reason I had to do a New Game Plus was for the stuff you needed a New Game Plus for, like getting a certain Persona that you can only get on New Game Plus and such. Then I had to do a New Game Plus because I forgot to get one of the treasure demons. That was annoying. Still cathartic as all hell to get that Platinum. I like going for completion of games, but it's not entirely obvious. And with that, we're 100% in Canal de las Flores. If you didn't do the crab side quest when we were here earlier, that would still be a percentage you need to get. However, you might have noticed that we are 100%, but we still don't have the trophy for... By the way, if you wonder what that jump cut was, that was me trying to think of which area to go to next. The side quest we have for the Eluxes is not in this area. That side quest is technically located in Pico de Gallo. So we're going to go over there and probably turn that in and grab the only item we missed over there. And when we do that, we're actually going to finish something else. Because if you're playing along with the game for some reason, first off, why this game takes so long to get between uploads just due to how I structure my celebratory uploads. And you've gotten a good amount of the trophies thus far in the game, and for doing this, we're actually going to get another one. We're going to get the Lore Master trophy, which, or I guess achievement technically, because I'm playing this on Steam, which means you've done every side quest in the game. If you do this and you have, if you're playing the game for the first time and you turn this in and you don't get that, that means that you've missed something somewhere along the line. It's probably more than likely in Santa Lucita just because there is a lot to do there. And here we get 3 items. Wow, that was a bit of a voice crack. And now there's only 1 item left for us in this area, and thankfully it's in fairly close proximity. We have to just get our way towards the entrance of the main dungeon portion of Pico de Gallo. Have I mentioned I love the underworld aesthetic for this area yet? Because I do. There's just something about gravity-defying things and backgrounds that I just love, especially when it's rivers or lava's flowing upwards. That's just cool. Either way, wall run up here, and that's the last chest for this area. And thankfully, Pico de Gallo also has an entrance to the next area I want to visit for completion. Next up, we're heading to the desert, and the desert has the most items I probably could have gotten along the way, because there's 1 item I could have gotten since we've been able to dimension swap. There's 1 item we've been able to get for some time. I'm not exactly sure the exact range of it. There's another we've been able to get since we've gotten the dashing derp derp. And the 4th one we've been able to get since we've been able to turn into a chicken. Maybe when we were first in Desertio Caliente. I honestly can't remember. But this is why I tend to do these kind of cleanup things with games like this, where speed isn't a factor for an ending. That I can just kind of go back and easily grab the items at this point. When speed starts playing a factor into the ending, I tend to try and grab more things along the way, since my Metroid playthroughs. In the case of games like Zero Mission or Fusion, though, where they have pretty strict requirements and you have to go out of your way for 100%, I tend to be a bit more forgiving about how fast I go, though. Most of my own playthroughs of Zero Mission, at least with the ending images, I tend to get, I think it's considered ending image 3 or 4, if you count ending image 1 as the worst one, where you're just gravity suit Samus looking, sitting on a rock. It's the one where Samus is in her blue Zero suit, kind of mostly facing away from the camera, but turning to face the camera at the same time. I think, if I recall the thing for that, I think that's under 2 hours, but under 100%? That sounds right. Alright, now at this point, we have to go to the underground sector, because that item we just grabbed, that's Heart Piece, is the only item I didn't grab above ground here in the desert. Everything else is underground. And this item might be one of the hardest to get, but I think I also go about getting it wrong. What you're supposed to do with this, I believe, is cling to the right wall and then goat fly over to here, dodging through those vines. But if you... this is why I could have probably gotten this earlier. If you just double jump through the vines and take a hit, you can get up here no problem. You need to use the rooster uppercut, though, I believe. Rooms like this, I believe, were generally streamlined for Guacamelee 2, because Guacamelee 2 had a lot of streamlining going on with its level design. For the better, might I add, in some cases. I'll talk more about Guacamelee 1 versus 2 when we get to the credit sequence later this part, because if... I forget if I mentioned it already, but not only is this part cleanup, but it's also the endgame. Because cleanup took a lot less time than I thought it would, because I thought... For some reason, I swear I got less of the items along the way. I don't know why, but that's just what I recall. double jump here because I don't want to die to that. Why not? At this point, I think we only have one thing left to purchase. Let's get the Intenso health regen. And that's probably going to be one of the very key power-ups when it comes to the other things we're going to be doing this part, between the endgame as well as part of 100%. And here's the last Desertio item. And I do believe that is the last stamina upgrade in the game. There is this kind of annoying thing when it comes to the bars in this game, admittedly. We have one more Intenso upgrade, obviously, because that just looks too uneven. But in a strange bit of inconsistency, we also have one more health upgrade to get? Which is odd, because at that point, you'd figure everything would look balanced, but no, the true endgame health bar is slightly longer than the Intenso and stamina meter, and I don't like that. It does not feel good. I wouldn't have minded if we started with less health, and it meant just getting them all even at the end game. Either way, our next destination is in the tool tree. Tool tree? I don't know. Because there's one item we couldn't have gotten here earlier, and you need the goat fly to get this. So you need to have gotten all the way to the end of Sierra Morena to do this anyway. Obviously, we could have gotten up here with the with the goat wall climb. At least I think that's what I call it being called. But we need to run all the way up the tree along the right side to reach the treetops. Now, I will say, this is probably one of the hardest things you can do in the game. We have an entire multiple screen long platforming section here that puts every little bit of your platforming reaction to test. Swapping dimensions carefully, using your abilities to platform carefully, you have a lot to do here. And one of the annoying things is, if you mess up, you can go back quite a distance here. Not the entire way, though, as 3 or 4 times throughout this entire area, they have little safety platforms like that to catch you. So you don't have to redo everything if you screw up, and you will screw up on your first playthrough, I can tell you that for a fact. But overall, this is honestly just a really delicious, it's weird to call it that, not tasty, but you get what I mean, bit of platforming. This is really well designed. Guacamelee 2 has a couple of these as well. And Guacamelee 2, I think, it's weird. I think Guacamelee 2s are better, but harder in a worse way. Because due to the added amount of abilities that Guacamelee 2 adds, I think they get a bit too overcomplicated with this, where it becomes a lot more, not reaction-based, but more hope you get lucky and not pixel perfect-y. In fact, no, that's a better way to put it. The sequels versions of these are a bit more pixel perfect at times, and not a fan of that, even though I'm overall a fan of Guacamelee 2. Alright, my advice for this section in particular is, don't use the goat fly, wall jump, and take your time. Hold towards the platform you're on, and not hold at specific times in order to slide down carefully, so that you don't, overrush and screw up. Pretty simple beyond that. Though they are a bit nice in that, while yes, you can clip through certain platforms if you get hit, those platforms will still save you. I think the best thing about this kind of platforming, though, is that while it's hard, especially for a first-timer, it comes across as so satisfying. When you finish this section, you feel elated. Though you also want to be careful about one thing with this and the equivalents to this in the sequel. Don't mash the Dimension Warp button, because otherwise you'll get into a lot of trouble. Oh, hello, chicken. We're only halfway there! Oh, you tease. What do you got to say? Ah, you. Not gonna lie, though, my first playthrough when I saw that, I did have a bit of a what moment. Because, oh god, I'm only halfway there. But our reward for doing this is the last item in the tool tree, another orb. Only one of these left to go. And we'll be getting that about 5 minutes, maybe? I forget the exact time. This particular part took a bit of recording time, because while it's only an hour long, just over, it took me a bit longer to record because first off, getting the last 25% in a certain area took a bit of personal time. But also between having to check some checklists, looking around the areas in my practice file just to remember some stuff, getting around this part took me way longer than an hour. Alright, now from the tool tree, we want to head to the nearest, why am I forgetting the name of the thing that was in Legends of the Olmec. We want to head to the nearest Olmec because we need to warp to the next area. It's the closest method to getting to wherever we need to head next. And as for where we're heading next, if we check the map, we're seeing there's not too many completed areas left. Where we want to head is Santa Lucita, because we're now heading to the Sierra. And while Sierra does have a Olmec, it's so far into the area that we'd have to backtrack in order to get the last 2 items in this area that we haven't gotten yet. So we're just going to head to the entrance and then go through the entire area again, basically. However, the first item is very early on. In fact, you can probably get an inkling of where this item is when you're first in this place. As for where that is, we'll be seeing that momentarily. You know, in an odd way, maybe it's just because it's a mountain. This area reminds me of the end game of Dust and Elysian Tale, which is another Metroidvania indie game that I really, really enjoyed. Though getting a platinum in that one on the PS4 was annoying, because hard mode is hard. Either way, from here on, we want to just go fly to the right, and eventually, we find this door. Cueva de la Locura. We're supposed to get here. This is for the big kids. When you give up, the exit's over here. Alright, so we saw a bit of an inkling of this earlier. I may have even mentioned it, forgetting that this section was over here instead of over there. But we now have a Mega Man Yoku block puzzle. And for the most part, it's fairly straightforward for the first 2 or 3 screens at least, because this gets a bit ridiculous later on. Alright, here we are. Once we start getting the single tile platforms, this starts to get a bit on the crazy side. On my first playthrough in Gold, I was here forever, and to this day I still can't tell if this is one of the things that they actually changed for Gold, where they made this actively easier. For Super Turbo Championship Edition, rather. Because I don't remember doing it this easily in Gold. But again, I've been through this before, so that's probably why. Overall, though, for me at least, this is pretty standard platforming just because I play a lot of Mega Man anyway. Though, these blocks certainly phase in and out a lot more quickly than the Mega Man ones. This is particularly the most interesting part of it because you have to jump and land on the same platforms a couple times. So once we're over here, we find ourselves back in Chakmul. And this is the final orb. Hey, the mask isn't complete. But that is every orb in the game that we can get. And for getting them all, we do get a little bonus. We feel lighter. What does that mean? We can fly as the chicken now by mashing the jump button. This sounds busted, but given how little of the game is left at this point, it's not that powerful, surprisingly. I mean, I guess if, say, you were in El Infernio and you didn't get gold ranks on the platforming challenges, yeah, this would be very useful. Or if there's still some items you just haven't found throughout the game, this would be very good. But at this point, there is only, I think, one item that's not an El Infernio from the areas we've been to yet that we haven't gotten. And I could have gotten that on the first trip through Sierra Morena even before getting this. The annoying thing about flying, though, is that almost every time you press the button, the chicken clucks. That doesn't sound too annoying, but trust me, it gets grating after a while. There's also an added bonus to getting all 6 orbs in that it changes the endgame a little bit, but I'll talk about that more when the time comes. But right now, let's just say, screw the rules, I got anti-gravity. And at this point, just fly up. And here's where the last item is. It's not even, it's just a silver chest too. Alright. At this point, we're almost done. There's only one place we haven't gotten 100% in yet that we've been to so far, because the final dungeon has its elemental item count. And that's El Infernio. The trouble lies in how we get that last 25%. I believe I mentioned it before, but it's been some time, so if I mentioned this before, forgive me. The last 25% in El Infernio's item count is getting all of the gold medals in the challenges there. And for the most part, I'm not showing that. The reason comes down to this. Most of the things I don't have gold medals in are the combo challenges, which the best way I can describe how to do those well is use your special abilities, often particularly dashing derp if you want to close some space, throw enemies regularly except for the challenges where you can't, same with the special moves, and overall just pace out your punches so that you don't take forever. That's really the best advice I can give when it comes to the combat challenges. It's a lot of developing your own strategy and figuring out a way to keep the combo going throughout every enemy. And some of those can get close. Like, I think the one where you can't throw enemies, you can, I think the gold, like 130 combo. I think I finished that with 135. It can get pretty close, but trust me, it is very possible. The only one I don't show off that's not combo related is the one where you have to throw that chicken into the saw blades in under 2 minutes to get the gold. The only reason I'm not showing that one is it took me an hour to get, and I wasn't going to record that anyway, so screw that. However, what I can show you is the challenge I never completed. I think it's challenge 10, I want to say? I forget the exact number, but it's the one where you're supposed to use all your special abilities and get to the goal in under 20 seconds for a goal, 15 seconds for a gold, 20 seconds for a silver, I want to say? I forget, we'll show it off anyway. And while that is possible to do without the chicken flight, I just think it's worth saving the chicken until we have the chicken flight just so I can make sure I clear it in time. I think to do it anyway, you need the goat fly and such, but at the end of the day, I'm just gonna do it like this. And here we go. Transform into a chicken and fly, eagle, fly. Yeah, to this day, I still can't tell how you're supposed to get over that. And there we go. That's every challenge shown off. And at this point, I'm just going to go through all these again and get their respective silver or gold rankings, rather. There's not many of them left. I got golds on most of them throughout the game for that very reason. And at this point, I'm just showing you which ones I haven't gotten golds on so you can try and figure out your own strategies for them. And if you're playing along, I do wish you luck. This could take some time, but trust me, for me, it feels worth it. And here we are afterwards with that sweet 100% ranking. That took me at least an hour, I want to say, off screen. You don't have to do it again. There is nothing in the ending changes for getting 100% items. But I just wanted to do it because it felt worth it to me. Hello, Jaguar Javier. I'm going to move on now. And now at this point, what you're supposed to do is goat fly over to the final dungeon from this little thing here. However, I'm the little chicken that can, so I'm just gonna fly over there like a badass, damn it! Fear me, for I am chicken. Really though, this can take a bit, so if you just want to save time, go fly. They also get a bit ridiculous with the zoom out for epicness. The thing I find the most interesting about this, though, is that this means that, technically speaking, if there's a way to change your X or Y coordinate through some zipping and such, it's probably possible to end up in here from somewhere else in Sierra Morena. And thus, welcome to the Great Temple, the final dungeon of the game, and easily the most linear area in the game. While other dungeons have had some alternating paths that get us some treasure chests and even some other ways to get to the exit, the Great Temple is one straight shot forward, filled with enemies, a couple of treasure chests, and the last platforming puzzles of the game. we are here for the rest of the part. So it's, overall, I want to say it's probably the shortest dungeon in the game, but do not make any mistakes. This place can kick your ass, especially in Super Turbo Championship Edition with some of the added enemies. Now, come on. These enemies in particular are probably going to cause the most of your grief here because they added a lot of these particular void-type enemies around here. It is interesting, though. I think I brought this up before, but again, since it's been so long since I did the last part of one of these parts, forgive me if I mentioned this before. I guess it's kind of the fault of me doing a game like this in particular. As a celebratory series, I tend to forget some of the more minor things I've said. Something I find interesting is that looking back through Super Turbo Championship Edition and a lot of the mechanics they have for it, this very much is almost like a Guacamelee 1.5 in a way, because a lot of the mechanics they would use for this game, they would later reuse or refine in Guacamelee 2. And from a game design standpoint, I find that very interesting. Also, it took me way too much time to realize that this platform was here for me to jump on. That's kind of sad. I won't say how long I was there, but it was longer than a minute and shorter than 3 minutes. That's the only information I'll give in regards to that. Also, a bit of a thing about this area that kind of makes it a bit easy when it comes to the enemies at the same time, while also being hard. There are plenty of times like this where there's little platforms the enemies can fall off of, causing them to die. And I am a fan of that just because it just feels so much like this game to be like, yeah, the enemies are stupid enough to fall off on their own. Seems in touch with the game's comedy style. Admittedly, though, in a way, I also find this final area a bit lackluster because I get it. It's the final charge. You've explored everything you can. You got every ability. What's the point in making this almost a Metroid-like area at that point? Because you're gonna probably be finding the right way anyway. But at the same time, given that I've liked the way the game's dungeon areas are laid out, even if they don't play out like a proper dungeon, it just feels weird in a way. There have been, I think, better final areas in games that did this exact same thing than this. Partially just due to how they do the platform mechanics versus the stuff. But, actually, a good way I can compare this. This is a good area, but it's no Pirate King's Castle from Shantae and the Pirate's Curse, because that is just damn near platforming perfection to me. Even though I'm not a big fan of the... Oh, which area was it? I think it's the one where you need to use the... It's the one with... I think you're supposed to use the cannon for it, is what you're supposed to do. And you have to go through all those destructible platforms when you're constantly surrounded by spikes. That room is hell, but it still feels so good to do. Whereas this, when you get down to it, they make best use of your platforming, but for the most part, when you end up using, partially just because it's the ability you got right before this area, is the goat fly. This is what you use through most of the area, and it feels good for a goat fly dungeon, and goat run, wall run dungeon even. But as an endgame dungeon, it feels lackluster due to this. And the way they try to make up for it, I guess, is the fact that they have all the blocks you need to use your powers for throughout it. And while that is true, that's in a way like... I guess a good way to put it is just checking off the fact that you're still using them, so it can say it's not like certain Zelda dungeons where you don't use the items much outside of their own dungeon. Dungeon design and power design when it comes to games like this can be a bit weird when it comes to that, because there's always going to inevitably be that one power that feels relatively ignored. That's just unavoidable. But in a game like this, it feels like they could have done more. But at the same time, from my memory at least, I want to say this was Drinkbox Studios' first approach at a Metroidvania, and they did really well for that. And Guacamelee 2 especially just refines a lot of this game's fat in that regard. Or trims the fat, rather. But it's still a legitimate issue with this game. Either way, a really annoying thing with this dungeon in particular is that they have a couple of rooms like this where they just want to throw every variety of enemy at you just as a sort of look how far you've come or look at what we've done thus far sort of thing. And it works for the most part, but I think they get a bit spammy with the enemies. I can't fault them for that because this game you've been taking out spams of enemies anyway through like the kill them all rooms and such, the enemy barrages rather. But yeah, it feels a bit odd in those long hallways, but they get a bit off with it. This in particular is one of the hardest areas in the game, not because of the enemies themselves, but because you're probably low on health from that previous room anyway, so it's very possible to die here, especially to this guy. I do not like this enemy variety. The standard versions of them are probably the most annoying enemy the game has to offer anyway, but the void variety just say, ha, I could do you better. Of course, they could just be an idiot and fall off like that. Good job, Windmill. I guess in a way, though, that's why Super Turbo Championship Edition exists anyway, because the reason STCE exists is to expand and address of the problems in the original Guacamelee/Guacamelee Gold. Because I recall when this game was released, problems included, I think, the combat being a bit on the simple side or repetitive after a bit, and the game being too short. Well, let's see. Intenso mode fixes the problem with the enemy barrages and that they can take a bit long and how many enemies there are to begin with. It also diversifies the combat a little bit more. And the added areas through Pico de Gallo and Canal de las Flores increase the game's length. And you know what? I find the fact that they were able to expand on that and still make it feel like an organic experience very interesting. Because usually when games try to expand in later versions, not counting remakes, they tend to sometimes feel inorganic with the changes added. Like, a good way to explain this is Resident Evil Remake. That game obviously changes a lot from the original Resident Evil. However, the changes they add because of how they change the mansion around feel organic to the world. Whereas, say, what's a good way to explain this one? To some people, Metroid Samus Returns, even though I really like that game. Compared to what the original game was, some of the changes they add on feel like they were added in there just to make the game feel more different. And while I think they succeeded in that, to some people, that was just probably making the game overstay its welcome, particularly when it comes to item collection. A complaint with that game I can legitimately see. Either way, moving on. Intenso mode is something I think you should just start abusing the hell out of in this area just to make things go faster. But also just because, let me put it like this, I think at that point, I didn't see how many items we had. We're maybe only a third of the way through this area at this point. Either way, at this point, the final area kind of speaks for itself for the most part. It can go on a bit long, and at this point, I'm just going to see what else I could talk about. Halo was just released, or announced to be released for the PC again, Master Chief Collection alongside Reach, which is cool. I'm not sure if I've actually talked about this on the channel much, if at all, but I like Halo, but I don't play Halo. We had Halo 1 on my brother's Xbox years ago, and I played a little bit of that. The only real memory I have of that is exploring the little forest area, I think it's outside the library, a bit with my brother. And during the final stage, finding the invisible flood enemy in the armory. I think we had Halo 2 for a little bit, but not long enough to remember anything about it from my memory. But the reason I don't remember too much of it is my brother's Xbox got stolen. He took it to college, and due to extenuating circumstances, he couldn't be in dorms, so he had to have some roommates and live in an apartment for like the latter half of his college career, if not most of it. And while he was in, I think it was his second or third apartment during college, it got stolen. It was like it was like the only thing stolen, I think, was the Xbox. So someone knew it was there, but we just don't know what happened to it after that. And it sucks because I liked his Xbox. There was a lot of good games. We had a lot of memories with that. In particular, we had the rarest version of not Metal Gear Solid, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. We had the Xbox version, and I sucked at it, but I enjoyed playing it. I played a lot as Roll and Mega Man, obviously. But I also played a good bit as, I want to say, Spider-Man and Wolverine was my other major team of note. Mostly because growing up, they were some of the only Marvel characters I recognized, because obviously Spider-Man's Universal, and I grew up with a VHS, well, my brother's VHS, of the 90s X-Men cartoon. I think it had like the first 2 episodes of it on it or something like that. I also played a bit as Iron Man, but it's both because I was aware of Iron Man through, I think, one of the cartoons he was in at some point or another, but also he looked like a cool robot, and if it's a robot, I'll probably like it. I think it was my mentality back then. And that's held true, because I do like a lot of robot-based media, rather. Either way, back to Halo. Because his Xbox got stolen, I didn't get to fully experience Halo 2 until I played the PC version. I want to say that was late high school, early college. Which means I had to get the fan patch version so that I could actually play the game, because obviously that game is not built for modern computers, to put it lightly. But with Halo finally coming to PC, I can finally play Halo 3, which is the one I really care about. I'll play 4, Reach, and ODST, but I only really care about 3. I know the exact story of all those games, but I want to play it. Because to me, the story is an important part of Halo, but that's not the reason I play Halo, I think is the best way to put it. And I guess if friends have, then I might play with multiplayer with them. I'm not big into multiplayer games. I'll play the occasional thing, Smash. Well, I play Smash a lot with my friends, actually, now that Ultimate's out. But, like, that's basically it in terms of the multiplayer games we play, beyond, like, Jackbox, Use Your Words, so on and so forth. Again, they're getting a bit overboard with the enemies here, game. At least I have all the upgrades at this point, so it's pretty easy. And admittedly, there's nothing stopping the player from just bum rushing it past all the enemies by dodge rolling. But I like to get as much money as I can before endgame. There's nothing I can spend it on at this point, but it just feels good to see that number rise. And look, there we go. That's what I was talking about. If you look at the top right, that item count don't look. That HP bar is slightly longer. Why is that like that? That is irritating. Damn it. I'm also kind of surprised they don't make the last item a stat up. Usually that'd be something I'd do. Is make the last item a stat up and not just some... I think the last item in this case is actually either a silver chest or just a standard gold chest. I can't recall at the moment. I recorded this... let's see, it's 10:34 p.m. my time right now. 6 hours ago, so... Why can't I remember it? I don't know. There is one thing I really like about this final area, though. It's the music. This game nails the soundtrack. It's the perfect mix of catchy and atmospheric, but it's not the memorable kind of catchy, as I guess what I want to say about it. Like, I'll sing along or whistle along while playing it, but it's not something I'll whistle along to if I'm not listening to it. It's nice, but it doesn't stick with me, I guess is the way I want to put it. And there's nothing wrong with music like that. That's pretty effective for game design all the same to me. But the music that really sticks with you is good stuff. Like, what's a good example of it recently? Yakuza 0's intro theme I never get out of my head. The Funk Goes On from Yakuza Kiwami has never left my head since I played that game. Yeah, it's the summarization of, I guess, the idea I'm trying to get across. I can't remember any of Yakuza 0's battle themes, but the themes are still good. So I'm trying to remember, was there 3 of those or 6 of those? I think each style had one, but I forget if each style type had one for each character, like Majima and Kiryu's Rush style had one, or if it was just one song for both of those. This area is also pretty kind in one regard, as you can see here. They give you some nice little shortcuts to get back down more quickly. They're not quite in a straight line, which is kind of annoying because you still have to go out of your way a bit to go all the way back down in case you miss something. But at the same time, I'm at least glad they are there. Alright, rooms like this are another reason I think that the chicken fly isn't as overpowered as it would seem. Because you might think, alright, I can just fly past all this and I'll just break the system. Cool! No, they put a block there. And, well, I'm honestly not sure if it's possible to warp out of chicken and then dashing derp derp. I probably could have done that and just saved myself like 20 seconds by doing this. But I honestly didn't think to try it, so if you can, whoops. If you can't, well, I guess I was right anyway. It just didn't seem like something I'd be able to do, but you probably can, and I just am a dumbass for forgetting I can. Hell, knowing my luck, the sequel probably has you do almost that exact same thing at some point, from what I recall, what I can't recall, rather. Well, thank you for that pointless combo. One trophy I think you can only get easily at this point by doing the El Infernio challenges. I think there's a trophy in this game for a 200 hit combo. And the challenges are probably going to be the only place you can do that reliably. Because while there are some areas in the game that have enough enemies with enough health that you could probably get a 200 hit combo through liberal use of your special moves and throws, you can only probably do it reliably there. I know I got that trophy during this playthrough. If I'm thinking of the right thing. It might be a Guacamelee 2 thing. The only 2 trophies in this game I don't get are beating the game on hard mode, which you unlock from beating the game, and beating the final boss with the El Diablo costume on and at full health. Why? First off, I don't like the switch from standard Juan anyway. And also, the Diablo costume, while I like the way it looks, I'm not a fan of its effect. Because I think I've briefly gone over costumes and the fact they have special effects, but I haven't really gone over what they do. Like, there's the Pollo Luchador, which I think regenerates your health, but you have a slower stamina rate. There's the Skeleton one, which I think gives you infinite stamina at the cost of, like, I think 0 health pickups. There's the Albresia, which you dish out damage more, but you take more. The El Diablo one is one of the more annoying ones in that your health is, I think, constantly sapping away, but you're more powerful and you drain HP from enemies when you attack them. There's, I think, a Pinata where you take more damage, but your money is increased, and Mighty Warrior, which I think charges your Intenso quickly, but you lose a lot of it if you get hit. And hard mode, I think the major changes to hard mode is enemy damage and health. They hit a lot harder, they have more health, and I think Zatabe and Flameface's boss fights are a bit different, where Zatabe, I think, has 2 small platforms instead of a large one in that platform swap. And I think Flameface summons more difficult enemies. I think Javier is just outright faster. I forget if the final boss is any notable difference. Though one thing, I should go back to the costumes as we're entering the costume shop right now just so I can buy some stuff. What was I going to say? One thing that's notable in this game on PC is that the Steam Workshop has a notable amount of fan-made mod costumes, and they're really good looking. Like, I have the store page up right now just to browse through them a little bit. There's one from one of Drinkbox Studios' other games, Sasha. There's a really good Samus one for Tostada. There's one for Lara Croft, Bayonetta, Shovel Knight, King from Tekken, Serious Sam himself, He-Man, or He-Hombre as it is, Zangief, so on and so forth. There's a lot of really cool fan mods here that, if you're playing the game yourself, I recommend you check them out. They don't change. I don't think they have individual abilities. I think they're basically just a replacement for standard Juan and Tostada. But they're really cool, and there's a lot of love put into them. I recommend you take a look at it if you're playing the game on PC. If you're on non-PC stuff, you're probably going to need to do some hacking to do these things, so yeah. But if you're playing on PC, it's there, it's supported, it's nice. I want to say this is the last enemy rush that you need to do. I think any enemy from this point on you can just outright ignore unless it's on a platform you need to get through the stage with. Okay, I screwed that up. There are times like this where I find myself trying to bum rush it, even though that's the proper strategy, and trying to overthink it. What you're supposed to do here is just climb up to the top of any platform. Just dimension swap, fall right, dimension swap, fall right, dimension swap, fall right. Okay. You may have noticed, though, I think I probably mentioned this briefly before, but you may have noticed that there were still some costumes I didn't buy in the costume shop with silver. That is because when you unlock a costume, it is unlocked for your game, not your save file. You're supposed to play through the game more than once and get more silver throughout multiple playthroughs in order to unlock absolutely everything. However, that's not required for an achievement or trophy in any way, so you don't need to do that. But if you want to do that, you have to play through the game more than once and get more silver that way. You may even recall I mentioned the fact that silver is game-wide. I think it was in part 2? Or maybe even part 1, when my silver count became inconsistent because I had to replay a certain section of the game. I want to say this is the last enemy, or no, the last platforming binge, because I'm looking at the timestamp. We're about 51:20 in, I want to say, and I think the final boss starts within the next 5 minutes. That's the worst kind of jump right there, by the way, when you just barely can't make it with your double jump and you forget to press up B in order to do the rooster uppercut. Oh god, no. I'm fine with screwing up the platforming a little bit at the end of the game, though. At this point, we're almost done. My focus is probably on preparing myself mentally for the final boss. Not much to really worry about. I'm just gonna let that skeleton live. You'll be the last of your people. Call out to whatever gods you believe in. So on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. And now we're getting dramatic zoom-ins, because the dramatic zoom-outs earlier wasn't enough. Okay, a bit too close here. Okay! Just gonna throw enemies at me after that? Okay. Let's see how you like Intenso. The lightning enemies here, though, get a bit spammy with their lightning beams, so you might want to focus on taking them out first. And that should be the last of all the enemies in the game, God, barring that one I just let live. So let's head on up here towards, I think, the last save point and the Olmec for the area. Like with Sierra Morena, they put the Olmec here at the very end of the area. This is it, buddy. I hope you're ready. May the gods look favorably on you today, Juan. This is your chance to stop Calaca and restore balance in the universe. Alright, thanks for the final pep talk, you two. I'll just use that. Talk to the Olmec so I can teleport anywhere and everywhere. And I think I take a look at the world map. Yep, 100% 6.5 hours in. Nice. Let's head on off to Endgame, folks. Oh, there's the HP bar. Juan! You have to get out of here. Calaca will be back any moment. I wish things hadn't turned out this way. I wish we were back in Play Bluco. I guess we're going to miss the festival. Maybe we could have... Not so fast! Luchador, how nice of you to join us for the final ceremony. Hey, you ugly Charo, you've got me. Now let him go. Ah, Muffin, how sweet. I knew you'd come around to the idea of us being together. After all, you are about to marry a god. I just hope your incessant yapping will be curtailed by the skeletonization process. Let him go. Why'd you care so much about this one anyway? Wait. I see what's going on here. You're that agave farmer! You're a luchador now, but I killed you! I definitely killed you! Not to worry. You'll have the great privilege of dying twice by my hand. I am Carlos Calaca, the greatest Charo that ever lived. That died, but lives again! Oh, and don't worry. I'll make sure she witnesses your painful, painful death. Juan! Now show me how worthless you truly are, agave boy. Carlos Calaca rematch. Calaca is surprisingly agile and is pretty easy to take a hit here. The way this fight works is that, from my memory, he only has 2 attacks. He'll teleport to either side of you in either dimension and attack you, or he'll teleport above you and do a ground pound. I think that says only 2 attacks. However, he always has a shield whenever that happens, and usually you'll only get time in for the shield breaking attack and maybe one more after that. However, he has so little health, as you can see, that honestly you don't have to worry too much about it. He does damage really well, don't get me wrong, but overall, not a very hard fight. If you go Intenso, it probably will go even faster, but I recommend saving that for a reason that is totally not predictable for a video game. Also, I really wish we saw more of Calaca throughout the game in terms of having him for cutscenes, because I really think he's funny. Especially with that last scene, but oh well. Luchador. You are lucky I spent all my energy on the ritual. But you are too late, for the Black Sun arrives. Come, witness the merging of 2 worlds, and the beginning of my new world order. The power, I can feel it welling inside me. Behold! I am Calaca, god of the living and the dead. Now tremble under my rule. Final boss time is Demon Calaca. And there totally wasn't a jump cut there. What are you talking about? I totally didn't die to this fight the first time around. Calaca is a bit of a difficulty spike boss-wise, because first off, he has a lot, and I mean a lot of health. And all of his attacks are the kind that you can't dodge through. All of them have that kind of purple-white face, so you need to be careful about his attacks. Thankfully, he only, I think, has 3 attacks of note. The 2 varieties of that little energy beam that we're seeing a lot is 1 attack. He has a bit of a ground pound attack, which is pretty telegraphed because he's about to do it right now. You need to jump and do a rooster uppercut to avoid that. And he has 1 attack that I think you can only dodge by ducking, and that's an energy breath attack, which again, when he moves when he's about to do it, you can tell he's about to do it. Once you destroy the shield, it takes a while for it to come back. However, I also think it might be influenced by how you're damaging him. Oh, that's right. He also has this 1 beam attack that you can dodge through, but it's pretty not notable. I want to say his shield regenerates the more hits he gets on you. And the best way to damage him is to throw meteorites at him. At least I'm assuming that's what it's supposed to be. They get damage him pretty quickly, and you can throw a lot of them at once. And the biggest bonus is the invincibility frames you get while throwing items / enemies. Makes it really easy to not get hit in this fight. However, at the end of this fight, I decided to get a bit risky and just go all out. Partially just due to the amount of health and how long it can take. Partially because he's the one boss that can really kick your ass here being too reckless on normal mode. Calaca is the hardest boss in the game, but he's not too hard. I'd say he's more of an intermediate difficulty, really. Unless you're playing on hard mode, in which case he probably is a pain in the ass. Yes. So I bet you were wondering exactly why earlier, when we got the 6th orb, there was still a piece of the mask missing. That is because the 7th and final piece of the mask is granted upon beating the game. And because of that, well, a certain special thing is going to happen. For right now, let's just check if the president's daughter's alright. You doing okay? And that's the good ending of Guacamelee. If you don't get all the orbs, the president's daughter dies there, and the credits images are entirely different. Juan still has the mask, and he's congratulated as a hero. I think he might even become like someone of note, like in the wrestling career. But I think the best part of the sad ending is the post-credit scene, because the Presidente's daughter and Juan meet up in the afterlife, and they get to be happy in death. And there's something really charming about that. Down in the description below, I'll leave a link to a YouTube video that has the bad ending for those who want to see it. As for the game itself, I'd say it's fantastic. The combat's fun. I think the exploration is a bit limited. In fact, I could say the power is probably limited due to that. But for the game it's fantastic. The music's great. Visually, it's a wonder. I love the way this game looks. And overall, I'd say it's a great game, but I think Guacamelee 2 trims the fat in all the right places and makes it just the overall better experience. If you want to play Guacamelee 1, though, it is on PC, Mac, Linux, and just about every console otherwise. PS3, PS4, Vita, Wii U, 360, Xbox One, Switch, it's everywhere. It is very easy to find a version of this, and I do recommend the game, even when I do recommend Guacamelee 2 more. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. But before we do that really quickly, at the end of the game, it actually tallies your time and actually gives you an online ranking. I forget if this is just for normal mode or normal mode 100%. But either way, ranked 170, not bad. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great night. Take care. Thank you so much for 200 subscribers. It really means a lot, because 200, obviously, compared to some other YouTubers, and I'll probably mention this again in the update video I was going to mention, I'm going to probably upload later this week, probably towards Thursday. 200 people watching me is obviously very small compared to a lot of people, but the thought that 200 people, which I think is about the size of my high school graduating class, is following this one channel is just incredible to me. I mentioned it a lot, but I did not think we'd grow even this big. So I have to thank you a lot for that. It really does mean a lot. This is a hobby to me, but it's a hobby that people watch, and that makes me feel good. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great night. And to many more people joining us. Onwards.